Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Got a fantastic webinar planned, and we will kick off very shortly. We're going to have our other panelists and presenters join us as they flick on their videos any second now, so you get a chance to eyeball us all, so to speak. And then I'll make an introduction to our host and presenter extraordinaire. So thank you again for coming on board with Creditor Watch's webinar. Today's discussion is Meet the Millennials, doing great things in unconventional times. I like that we didn't use unprecedented because I think that we are all sick of that term. Certainly unconventional times. We've got a great lineup for you today. Looking forward to getting stuck into it. As always, we are recording today's webinar. And we are going to share that later on. So if you do have to leave us early, hopefully that's not the case. You can catch up later on. We'll send this round to everyone so you can finish off what you started. So today, our moderator, our presenter is Ginette Muller. Welcome back, Ginette. Thanks for joining us again.
Hi. Thank you.
Ginette's a Safe Harbour Specialist, which is to say the least. She's more importantly a partner at Hall Chadwick, and she's kindly put her hand up to moderate today's discussion with a fantastic range of people across various industries and talents, and she will ultimately be in charge today. So Ginette, I won't take up any more time away from you, but I just wanted to say to everyone listening in and watching, we will be sort of flicking our cameras on and off as Ginette speaks to us one-on-one. So if it looks like we're sort of ducking in and out, that's the reason. We want to make sure that you've got the ability to sort of focus on the person that Ginette will be speaking to. So Ginette, over to you.
Great. Okay, thank you. And thank you for the introduction, Patrick, and thanks for the team at Creditor Watch for making today possible. As you mentioned, the last time I was here, I was talking about Safe Harbour and the temporary changes to the insolvency regime. Recently, those changes, which were due to expire at the end of this month, got an extension to the end of the year. So just for those of you who may recall, a quick reminder, it's been in the press, but the areas which have been extended include Safe Harbour for everyone, which means all directors continue to be protected from any form of insolvent trading. And also statutory demands. The amount that you can sue another company for has increased from a minimum of $2,000. Now you need to have a debt of $20,000, and the time that you must give that debtor pay before you can wind them up has been extended from 21 days to 6 months. And there are similar measures to this with respect to the bankruptcy regime as well. Now, just on that, I've seen Patrick quoted quite extensively in the press about this, and you know, I share his view that we hope that this is the last extension that we see to this. You know, in many ways, it means that there are zombies out there, and hopefully they're not doing too much damage and not hurting other good businesses and causing them distress. And I think that's in a way a really good reason and a reinforcement in many ways of why we need services like Creditor Watch. It's really good for a credit bureau like that to help us keep on top of all of these things, because obviously, you know, judgment still can be entered into. Now, before we get into meeting our millennials today, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions for any of the speakers, there's on the side there's a go-to webinar, and you know, just type your questions in there and we can answer those at the end, or Patrick and I have in times before if they've been too technical, would take up too much time, we've just sent you an email after the event. So today we're talking to 4 millennials who operate in various different areas of trade and commerce. Their stories might inspire you or might just give you some comfort to hear what's happening in other parts of the business community. I personally think it's interesting to hear from smart young business leaders and how they think compared to how I think. For example, one of my favourite quotes is from J. Paul Getty, who said, "My formula for success is to rise early, work late and strike oil." and that's pretty much last century. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the much younger generation to hear what their repertoire is, and perhaps it'll be something from this century. So let's meet our panelists. If we could start with Patrick Coughlin, CEO and co-founder of Creditor Watch. I'm sure he needs no introduction. Thanks, Patrick. Reese Buzzer, sorry, Reese. Reese is the Finance Shared Services Manager of Reese Group. Hello, Reese. You can see there. Alicia Auden, Legal Practitioner Director at JHK Legal. Thank you, Alicia. And Dane Skinner, Director at BCR Advisory. Welcome, Dane. Hello. Great. All right. I'd like to start with you, Patrick, if I could.
Excellent.
So there we go. Everyone's just going to turn off their cameras. So, right. Well, nice one. Okay. So, Patrick, like a lot of us, you started your career washing dishes at the local restaurant. Simultaneously, you studied arts at university, secured your degree, and joined Creditor Watch. You've been in the same company for 10 years. A remarkable feat, especially for someone in his 30s. Now you're the CEO of Creditor Watch, Australia's most innovative credit reporting bureau. I'd like to ask you about the experience of being a millennial leader, the challenges and the opportunities. One of the unique things about young leaders is that they tend to pave their own way, looking to improve old processes, and probably more often than not, getting under the old guard's nose. Is that you, and was that your experience?
Yes. Yes and no, I guess, is the way to answer that. As you said, I worked in hospitality for quite a long time, as most people do, through late high school and then into uni. It's a great way to make money and be able to travel on the extensive uni holidays that you get when you go to uni. Worked in a publishing business, and then ultimately had an opportunity to join what wasn't even Creditor Watch. It was an idea that Colin Porter pitched it to me. I didn't even really understand how credit and debt worked. I had a credit card and that was about it. But it was an opportunity to sort of take a chance and start from scratch, be involved in something from the very beginning, which not a lot of people ultimately get the ability to take advantage of. Though in more recent times, particularly in the last sort of 5-10 years, it seems to be happening a lot more. There's a lot of innovation out there, and technology is making it much easier to start businesses as we move away from product heavy to tech heavy rather. So in starting Creditor Watch, being there from the beginning, we had this mindset that this is how we should do things. We didn't even go out to look at how things were being done until probably a year or two into the business. We sort of isolated ourselves from that and decided, look, this is a fairly extensive problem. Businesses need to be able to run a credit report in the most simple of scenarios. We are in small business. We all came from small business, and we can't do it. So there must be an easy way to solve this, and that was ultimately the mentality we went into it with, was how can we solve a fairly simple problem with a simple solution, and we haven't tried to overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, I mean, that's the entrepreneur way, isn't it? I mean, it's you find a problem and then you solve it, and that's what you set out to do. And I suppose, you speak to young people these days, and they talk about Elon Musk, or they want to be like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. And I mean, was that sort of ticking away somewhere in the background for you as well? I want to be one of those people.
I'm still hanging out to be a professional football player, to be honest. So I certainly wasn't one of those entrepreneurial types. Finished school, went to uni because I thought that's what you should do, and that's what you have to do. And it wasn't until later on, probably 10 years, that I started to really understand the entrepreneurial way of life, and Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and whatnot. So yeah, it wasn't what I had intended, but now I've certainly got that bug.
That bug. Okay, so you've pretty much got the dream job then. I mean, it may not have been ultimately planned, but you got there. And
Yeah.
you know, what do you think was the catalyst? What do you think helped you get to those places? I suppose people would be interested to know what could they emulate, or what might help them in their careers if they, you know, look at you and think, gee, I'd like to be Patrick.
Yeah. So I liked your the J. Paul Getty quote that you used, because really early on at Creditor Watch, I came across it was a post-it note that was online or something like that, and I've still printed it out and I've got it next to my computer, and it says, "Shut up, work hard, be patient." Now it's a borderline aggressive starting off with the shut up, but I think that, you know, that hard work and being patient is really important. Nowadays, you know, millennials get a bad rap for being impatient and, you know, wanting everything now, and moving on to a new job or a better job very quickly, or at the hint of a little bit more money. And I think, you know, tracking a tenure, so to speak, and learning about a business from all aspects, not just your role. If you're in sales, it's great to understand it from a dev or a product or a marketing or a management point of view. So if you're moving from job to job, it's hard to do that. Whereas if you're sticking at one job and you've got the opportunity to sort of immerse yourself in the business, that's really important. I think age is a really big mental barrier. I think for both millennials, but also the older generation who either run the business, own the business, or sit on the board, they expect to see grey hair in order for you to be reputable and respectable and have the ability to run a business. And it's certainly not the case. And you just look at some of the fastest growing businesses and biggest businesses, you know, they are being thought of and run by young people now. So I think that's really important that you overcome any sort of mental barrier that way. And also just being genuine. There's an infectious sort of nature to being genuine and either wanting to help and getting stuck in. So there's no secret sauce. You know, timing and luck certainly plays its role, but yeah, that hard work and doing more than, you know, what your job title and roles and responsibilities in the job description says is really important.
Oh, well, that's great. Thank you. I think we might come back to you, Pat. You might want to use that as when I do the roundup. I want a new saying, so that might be yours. But anyway, thank you for that. I might invite Alicia now to join us. While I'm doing that, I'll just move on to Alicia's page. So welcome, Alicia. Alicia is a legal practitioner director at JHK Legal. She's had over 10 years experience working in commercial litigation law, named Lawyers Weekly Insolvency Partner of the Year in 2019. Alicia, COVID-19 statistics, border closures, a tsunami of insolvencies. If we didn't have these three topics at the moment, it seems our newspapers would be empty. Given the recent extensions to both the JobKeeper package and the insolvency laws that I mentioned earlier, as a lawyer with a predominantly small business clientele, you'd sort of think you'd be run off your feet, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Look, I mean, from our SME to blue chip clients, it's been a weird, wonderful, and yes, busy year for sure. We've definitely seen a lot of different work come into what we were seeing at the beginning of the year. So, I mean, from our litigation side of things, a ton of advisory work from contracts to employment. And then we've got our other side of the business where we've got commercial teams, so they really haven't come up for breath since March. Leasing reviews, negotiating contracts, structuring, the list, it just really goes on. It's been a fun year.
Oh, that's excellent. So, you know, with that, I suppose, you know, we're both in Queensland, and most of us are back in our offices up here. From about March to now, what was that like for your firm? You know, with the work from home, was it a good experience, bad experience? Did you improve things? Were there efficiencies, or was it a struggle?
Look, I think the pandemic really forced us to take a step back and really think about not just how we do our work, but also how we market. Law in itself is really relationship based, and we had to have a good think about how we continue to nurture those relationships when we couldn't leave our house. it really gave us an opportunity to demonstrate to our clients that we are literally there through the good times and the bad times. So, I mean, in terms of the work, this is one area that has been a real positive, because it's forced everyone, not just our business, to make those changes that should have occurred already. So we saw, for example, the courts adopting different ways of attending hearings. I conducted a few hearings on MS Teams in the federal court with online bundles. And while this has now gone somewhat back in person, I'm really hopeful that means there's some flexibility around this moving forward. Looking at our clients, there's been a real acceptance of video conferencing for those that we can't meet in person. Personally, I found that's really great for new clients. We can have a face-to-face meeting rather than on the phone. You know, even 12 months ago, the suggestion that we should sit on Zoom and have a chat about things was just weird for a lot of people. So I've loved that. I've been using Zoom for ages. And I guess the other thing is not just our firm, but we've also reviewed our efficiencies and technologies, and it's been amazing to see an uptake of platforms such as Slack and Trello and automated bots for work and you know, online briefing apps that some people sort of took up, but we've had a real big uptake in the last even 6 months, really. So there's been so many, although there's been lots of bits and pieces that are not great, obviously. In that respect, at least we can take some positives, which I always like to look for.
No, that's excellent. I don't even know half of those words that you said, so I'm sure they're amazing. Whatever. But look, I hope that at the end of the day, as a client of various lawyers, yourself included, I'm hoping that it reflects on the bill. So I'm all for it. So speaking of that, I suppose, you know, do you find that you know, people are fee sensitive? Are they doing crazy things like trying to half do some of the jobs? You know, how's Google impacting you? Is there been more than just the COVID disruption? Are there other types of disruption that have come at the same time?
Well, I suppose, you know, with everyone on their tablets, iPhones, whatever, Dr. Google, for the equivalent for lawyers, has always been there, but I suppose with more time, that's definitely been more prominent in some people, especially those that perhaps are not used to the legal process. So for us, it's been making sure we can demonstrate value to our clients, and it's been a great opportunity to speak with our team and ensuring we're really nailing the basics. So having those conversations with clients and really listening to the client about their business, their drivers, what they consider their best outcome, how they like to communicate, and demonstrating our value is understanding their business and tailoring the advice to suit them. I mean, don't get me wrong, Google has some great resources. You know, might start with something new by Googling it, but it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. There'll always be a place, gratefully, for lawyers for that critical analysis and tactical approach, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think being a millennial has made your task a bit more difficult in service delivery, or, you know, do you think there are any tips that you could share with people today about, you know, if being a millennial and whether that impacts where you are in your career at the moment, or how to get ahead?
Sure. I think Patrick touched on it a little bit earlier, that often people expect grey hairs to be the ones running the business. So I suppose for someone that only has one grey hair, although I got rid of it, it's about being consistent and showing that you are the right person for the job. And I think I touched on it earlier about being back to basics. So for me, it's about setting the tone with the client when you first interact. So basics: listen to your client, be upfront, be consistent, provide regular updates. Big one for us, check in on scope and expectations, meeting deadlines, especially if you impose it yourself. And on what you're touching on, invoicing, estimating and stick to them. I have a bit of a rule that no invoice should go out if it's a surprise. the hope with that is, I find usually if you're having trouble managing expectations, it means there's been some kind of breakdown in communication in those list of things. So hopefully it's either a matter of stepping back, and sometimes that might mean reviewing with a colleague to see whether that can be improved. I'm not going to say it's going to work 100% of the time, but most of the time I find if I follow those rules, people will respect that we know what we're doing and we're consistent, and that's about it really, basics.
Well, thank you. I'm beginning to get this feeling that everything that's new is old, or is it everything that's old is new? I'm not sure, but these are familiar tips, except for those words that I didn't know what they were before. So thank you. Thank you, Alicia. And I'll come back to you shortly for some final words. I'd like to move on now to our next guest, and Reese will join us now. I'll just move forward to Reese's. Hi, Reese. Thank you.
Hello, Jeanette.
So maybe, Reese, you can elaborate a bit more on, this whole what's new is old, old is new, and how the pandemic's been disrupting your business. But before we do that, I'd just like to introduce you. Reese has been at the Reese Group for over 8 years. The Reese Group, as many of you will know, is Australia's leading distributor of plumbing, waterworks, HVAC, irrigation and bathroom products to commercial and residential customers. Their turnover exceeds $6 billion, with locations across Australia and New Zealand and the United States. They employ close to 8,000 people. Reese is currently the Finance Shared Services Manager, and he leads the transactional finance functions across the group. Prior to joining Reese, Reese held various positions in credit and general management, as well as in sales and in industries such as transport and recruitment. He's a father of 2, with another on the way, so I'll keep him busy. He's also a keen cyclist in both racing and ultra endurance events. So welcome, Reese.
Thank you.
We heard from Alicia on how the pandemic disrupted legal services, and look, it's hard to imagine a business not being disrupted. Many businesses went into a survival instinct, and people were put on JobKeeper, expenditure and projects were slashed. Is that how your firm dealt with the uncertainty?
I think, Jeanette, look, we've been pretty lucky in the construction space in that, we've been, I guess, in some ways largely unaffected, probably mostly of recent times in Melbourne Metro, and for a short period in New Zealand as well, our business was affected. But for the most part, we've been pretty lucky. But when it first did arise, we sort of wanted to move forward in 2 ways, and that was around protecting our business, and the other way was around accelerating them. We like to go through these times and come out the other side in a much stronger place so that we can really accelerate. So from a protection point of view, we acted really quickly, whether it was a capital raise that we did, at a corporate level, and we did that in 2 weeks, whereas in the past when we've done that, it's taken months. We looked at mitigating other risks around collections and trying to get money in quicker, around supporting and caring for our team, making sure everyone was comfortable at home, and obviously having a quick look at costs and how we could rein those in. But we did all that quickly with a continuous improvement mindset. Once we'd established that protection, we very quickly, after only a few weeks, went straight into accelerate mode. And like I said, we find that we really look at this as a time that we can really put our foot down and come out the other side quicker. In some ways, we did that was around looking at what services we could offer. We're predominantly a product-based business. We said, what services could we sell? How could we amp up our online offering? And from a service perspective, we looked at financing options. Could we sell finance to consumers? Could we sell finance to businesses? And that's something that we're actively working on now. Could we sell training services? We've got a learning and training team. Could we sell that externally? Could we sell tech? Some of our ways to distribute. Could we sell those things? So we're looking to stand those up really quickly now and accelerate, where a lot of other businesses are still in a protection mode. So we think that's really important.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, to a lot of people, they went the opposite way, as you said. I mean, was there that fear of failure with this strategy? I suppose, you know, there's a scale. How did you balance that with your appetite for expansion?
I think, like, if you're talking about the sort of risk and worry about failure, we don't look at it that way. I think, you know, a good example, I was thinking about this morning, was, you know, the old Blockbuster story, and, you know, they were offered Netflix for $50 million at one stage. And Netflix, I had a look, you know, just recently, was worth $125 billion. So, I mean, would that have been a risk, or is that an opportunity for them at that stage? So, you know, we're more looking at ways to disrupt or ways to innovate, to really play the long game. And so, you know, if it's disruption, can we disrupt with different products? With online, you know, can we move to a more online? We're very much an in-store shop, but can we move more online? And when it comes to innovation, you know, we're talking about, you know, at the moment, RPA and machine learning and those types of things. And we currently have robots. You know, in my teams, we've got 3 robots operating across accounts payable, receivable, and credit. And if you said that to some credit managers a few years ago, they probably would have laughed. And, you know, from a long game perspective as well, you know, we look at staff and we hire. You know, we've got an accounts receivable officer who we hired with an IT background. We've got credit officers who are studying robotics. So yeah, I think it's all the way it's the way you look at it. And in regards to failure, you know, it's okay to fail. We want to give our teams permission, and we tell them, you've got permission to fail. We want you to try and fail.
Yeah, no, look, that's really interesting. You've been particularly innovative in your industry, and I suppose you sound like you're incredibly involved in this whole process. Have you found being a millennial has been, you know, valuable in this regard? Like, is the youth of your business leading the way, so to speak, or is it coming from the grey head people that Pat was referring to earlier?
I think young people, definitely. I mean, you know, young people fundamentally consume things differently. So whether it be TV or food or groceries, and these people are our customers now. So if you don't understand and empathize with them, you know, you can't innovate accordingly. So I think, yes, you definitely need young people from that innovation perspective, but, you know, the behavioural side of things is also very important, and that comes with you know, with that young person kind of vibe. And so, you know, the enthusiasm and passion, you know, curiosity, the want to explore, and a real growth mindset. And, you know, we might touch on that a bit later, but so yeah, I think there's an incredible amount of power in that group.
Yeah, no, look, that's great. Thank you, Reece. And I really like the idea of empowering people by letting them know that, you know, failure's okay. Just don't do it all the time, right? Okay, I'll be back shortly. All right, I'd like to now introduce Dane Skinner, and I'll just move the PowerPoint onto the next slide. Get that. Oops, there we go. Welcome, Dane. Dane has had 10 years experience in corporate advisory roles in Sydney and Auckland. He has had significant experience across all industries. Key focus includes voluntary administrations, restructuring and liquidation. So Dane, I'd like to focus today a bit on stereotyping. We've touched on it a little bit with the bad rap that the millennials get. Do liquidators get that too? And is that a double whammy for you?
Yeah, absolutely, Jeanette. Liquidators and millennials are in the gun. We're meant to be entitled, but then I've got the added frustration that the perception of the liquidators is that they're out to get you. And I can sort of speak from it freshly because I'm a newly appointed liquidator. And it's actually not that entitlement at all. ASIC controls the liquidation registration process, and it's made it extremely difficult to get a license now. In 2017, the ILRA was introduced, and it changed the process from a simple tick box system to a lengthy application and a panel interview. So all these boomers out there would have simply ticked a box and submitted a form, and they would have been awarded their license. And now I've got to walk over coals to be able to get one and operate in this space. So the key parts of the license are now you've got to be highly qualified. So you've got to have a degree or a professional membership. You've got to have professional capacity. Now, what that means is they're trying to remove the license from people who are out there sort of working by themselves. So you need to show that you've got staff, IT, policies, insurance, and resources to conduct the job. And the job is there to protect creditors, is to protect the people and the public. So ASIC seems to be taking this approach that it understands that liquidators get a bad rap. So they're trying to solve some of these problems that are creating it. The other parts of it are that you're meant to be a fit and proper person. You know, that should go without saying, but it just adds the element that you're not disqualified for managing a company. You don't have a criminal record, and you're not bankrupt. But the key part to it, and the thing that's changed the most, is you've got to have 4,000 hours of senior level experience, and that's got to be signed off. So you need to be reporting directly to your senior liquidator on these jobs, and you have to justify every single hour of the 4,000 hours at your panel interview, who can ask you anything, any question, any experience or a scenario, and they are the ones that ultimately allow you or award you to have your license. And the panel are made up of generally someone from ASIC, someone from the government, and an industry expert who's seen it all. So the process has changed quite significantly.
Well, as you know, I have a registration myself, so I can sympathise with you. Things have certainly changed. So yes, look, I hear you, and well done you for getting your ticket the hard way. I might have been one of those people that didn't have to quite go through the system that you did. But anyway, moving along, in relation to commerce and trade, if we just look at that for the moment, we think about you being a millennial. Do you feel that your age, when you're giving people advice or helping them with an insolvency or restructuring matter, do you think your age is a positive or a negative?
That's a bit of a hard one, so I just change this. I would say it's mostly a negative, and the reason I would say that is because the boomer generation, they'll tell you every day they've got far more life experience than you millennials, and they expect the same sort of trait when they're seeking professional advice. So they want to see the grey hair, they want to see the experience. No different to going to the doctor. You need to, you wouldn't put your hand up and say that you want to see the newly appointed doctor. You want someone who's seen it all and can diagnose you properly. Whereas I find that millennials are the opposite. They actually want advice that's fresh and dynamic and something different, and it's alive. The real problem is, though, that there's far more business failures where you've got the more experienced or the boomer generation, but because that's purely a numbers game. So there's far more older people running businesses at the moment that are going to fail. So the problem for my generation is that when they go and see someone, it's a struggle to get on top of that and prove that you've got the experience. The reality is, though, the millennial liquidators and my generation, I believe they're far more in touch with the legislation, and they're more progressive, and they know how to handle a restructure that may be a little bit more, call it creative, and more in touch. So I guess to summarize, like, more experience doesn't necessarily mean a better outcome. It just means you've got more experience and you might do it the way that you always do it. Doesn't necessarily mean better result.
Well, look, it's a personal view of mine, but I think that the insolvency industry is going through major disruption at the moment, not dissimilar to a lot of industries. And I think that your generation, millennials, are really well placed to change the world, to do things differently, to approach it from a different perspective. And like you say, you've grown up with the legislation, and that's part of the way you operate, and you've had to go through rigorous training, etc. Not that we didn't, it's just that we were very much more hands-on, shall we say my generation. So do you see the industry being significantly disrupted at the moment, and you know, getting a foot in the door? Do you think you've got your work cut out in that area?
Oh yeah, it's not only at the moment. It's generally speaking. Like, I believe that liquidators get a really bad rap, and the public's perception is that we're not to be trusted, and you'll probably agree with that. So I think it's up to my generation to change the mindset that a couple of bad eggs created in the past, and prove that we're actually out there to help people. Because the problem that's being caused by all this negative stigma is that the creditors or directors aren't getting good advice. They're actually going after people that aren't the best qualified people to be dealing with these situations. So in my view, a liquidator is the first point of call when you've got a business that's in financial distress, or you're in personal financial distress, because a liquidator's job is to provide you or the creditor with options and the consequences of those options. You're not actually signing up anything. You've gone there to seek a range of different ways to handle it. So I believe we've got our work cut out for us, and how we fix it is one step at a time. We slowly but surely should become people's trusted advisors, and we should focus on outcome, not on the financial gain. Some of the ways that I think that our generation is trying to do this is we're using technology to explain this more and to try and get in front of more people. And so technology is a great medium to be able to, instead of a referral base, you can get out and touch so many different people, the individual people, and you may resonate with a group of people and who will come and seek advice from you. And then the other way that I believe our generation's changing is that we're moving from that traditional accounting mentality. And what I mean by that is 6-minute units, timesheets, paper, that's all old school. I believe that it should be more advisory and outcome focused. So it should be more on almost like a qualified management consultant. Someone comes to you, offer you a problem, and you provide them with the solution of how to fix it and charge them a fee.
Well, look, I think there'll be a lot of people who would agree with you that would be an improvement on the way things are at the moment. And unfortunately, it's up to people like you to lead the way in this area, and it sounds like you're going to. So good on you, Dane. Thank you very much. I will come back to you shortly for final words. But look, before I do hand the controls back to Patrick, I'd just like to ask all of the panelists to turn your cameras back on and pop in for a sec, so we can just go around the room. And I'll just put us back to here. There we go. All right. Well, firstly, thank you everyone for participating in today's discussion. It's been a lot of fun. It's been my first opportunity to ever play I don't know, Koshi. Thank you, Pat, for letting me have that opportunity. Much appreciated. So I'm going to start with you, Pat, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a few words and tell us what you see, maybe about the rest of the year, or a new quote for me, whatever you like. Share something with everyone. Just final words. Thanks.
Yeah, look, I think There's been, look, Credit Watch has been in the media a lot around, primarily around, zombie and insolvency, and it's got quite a negative connotation to it. And, we are working on, or we're always working on positive stories, and we're hoping to have something out this week or next. But we're also working on something bigger than that will sort of cement the importance of Credit Watch's data in the economy and particularly in the media. And I think it's something that I'm pretty confident will outlast me at Creditor Watch. Not to say that I'm going anywhere, but I think this, what we're putting together is something really special, and it'll leave a nice lasting legacy. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be early next year. So we're still probably 4 or 5 months off that.
Wonderful, thank you. Alicia, final words from you?
I think it's just my final advice is just be nimble in the changing market. Look at the economy and see where you can add value to your clients.
Good advice, thank you. Reece?
I think just keep working on a real growth mindset, and learning, change things up a bit. Maybe in your huddles, instead of asking for an update, ask what's new, what have you learnt, and what can you share, because that's when learning becomes really powerful.
Thank you, thanks, that's good advice. Dane, final words?
Yeah, I think it's just constantly listening and being open-minded with change. Don't shut people down when they're offering you advice. I think if someone's offering advice, they actually care enough about your situation to be giving you that advice. So don't close it off, and just take every word on board.
Fabulous. Thank you again, everyone, for participating in today's presentation, and I'll hand you back over to Pat.
Thank you, Jeanette. Thanks again. That was perfect, and thank you to our panelists. We do actually have a couple of questions that I think we can answer before I say a final thank you. First one here for Reece. So many great ideas, branching out and adapting. Are any of those ideas ones that came up prior to COVID, or were they put in place because of COVID?
That's a good question. A couple were earlier, but were almost on the shelf. Like the financing option, we've really accelerated since COVID struck. Some of our online offerings came up as a result of COVID. So a good mix. I think the key really has been that we made time for them. Instead of investing time in trying to keep doing what we're doing, we saw it as a time to accelerate and to pick those things up and make them happen and get stuff done.
Excellent. I've got a question here. I'll get Dane and then Alicia to answer this one. How do you think 2021 is going to look? As being a debt collector, I believe the government has stopped too many processes to stop taking debt, but it's not going away. So what are we sort of expecting 2021? Dane, start with you.
Well, first of all, it really depends on what the government does. Everyone in our industry has, got their fingers crossed that they're not going to let these moratoriums continue and destroy our economy. Someone's going to pay for this moratorium period, and it's ultimately going to be our generation and the ones below us. I believe that December will be the end of it. I believe they'll slowly wind it back. I wouldn't bank on the insolvent trading and the statutory demand process to be lifted. I think they might do one or the other. And then I think it would be finally lifted in, say, March. But what that means, I'm thinking, is that there will be a bit of a time lag. You'll have all these creditors working out, let's call it the new normal, and the new normal will be to collect your debts. And there'll be a time lag of, say, 1 or 2 months, and then you will start seeing a real increase in activity, and people would start getting anxious around if they're collecting money or if they're receiving a letter to pay. So I think you will see a raft, or definitely insolvencies increase, but I believe you'll also see a whole range of restructures being the catalyst, well, this being the catalyst of that problem. So first of all, restructures and then liquidations.
Yeah, I think I probably agree pretty much with everything that Dane was saying, and I was just having a conversation with the client before I hopped onto this seminar on that exact same thing, because yeah, it will be interesting. I think there's probably two parts of it, looking at both the creditors and the debtors. I'm seeing almost immediately now with the extensions, those creditors that are just having some really bad cash issues because the debtors don't feel the need to respond to them at the moment. I think we're going to see some of those topple over even before next year, as we're looking at JobKeeper being wound back as well. And then next year, like Dane said, once we've got that little bit of space and recovery start, I'm thinking around March, we're going to see a whole lot of those debtor companies being wound up. And also, you know, keeping in mind that the ATO are doing a bit of a softly approach when it comes to their recoveries too. That's going to make a big impact when they start ramping things up.
Yeah, you'd imagine they would be the last ones to sort of collect. That'll be a way to sort of soften the blow and hopefully flatten the insolvency curve.
I mean, even today, I think I saw on Accountants Daily, there was a with the SGC amnesty ending last week, that the ATO just brought out a new practice direction on how they're going to deal with the penalties with that moving forward. So I think there'll start to even be some movement in that respect too. So watch this space.
Yeah, that's right. Plenty to well, don't hold your breath for, because we know how things change. Everything looked great in June, and then unfortunately, you know, we've seen lockdowns and whatnot, second wave in Melbourne. So yeah, look, I'm quite hopeful that it comes to an end in December. I think we've got to get back to some sort of normal sooner rather than later. I'm conscious of the time, so I will wrap it up now. Again, a big thank you to Jeanette, Dane, Reese, and Alicia. I hope everyone who signed in and listened in, watched today, got something out of it. Of course, we're always open for suggestions, feedback, questions, anything like that. Don't hesitate to contact us. But other than that, please jump on the blog, keep an eye out for future webinars that are coming up. Jeanette is always writing, you know, a little bit of contribution for us in terms of articles on the blog as well. So don't be shy to jump on there and have a look. Thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic week, and we'll see you again soon.